All right, welcome in everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Thanks for being so on time. I'm so excited to spend the next time with you all today. We know there's a lot of places you can be on a Saturday morning in March, but really grateful that you showed up here today and spending your time with us. We're going to have a really great program with really amazing speakers. With that, I just want to again welcome everyone for being here. My name is Vina Vo. I have been involved with Pivot since 2017. Really grateful to be in this community. Our first launch into action or march into action was actually in 2020 when we came out and trying to rally the vote to win the election. And it's amazing that's already been 4 years, and here we are back again for this really important election. I know that it has been challenging to really feel motivated. I know there's a lot going on in the world and a lot that's going on in everyone's personal lives to be called back to this again. But as we know, democracy, you have to continue fighting for it. And so really grateful to be in this community with you all today. My political journey really started with Pivot and probably will always be with Pivot. It is a place in which I have found my political family, my political home. So by you all being here today, really want to thank you all for being a part of this adventure together. Some folks here have been with Pivot since the beginning and some are perhaps new, but what's really beautiful is that there is a place for everyone to be a part of this together. And so today, if this is your first time, this is a great start, a great introduction. You'll be hearing from amazing people telling you and sharing with you their personal stories on how you can get involved, how you can get connected, and how you can get plugged into this really important election cycle. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our board president and one of Pivot's original founding members, Dr. Tung Nguyen. There are a lot of accolades that I can share, but I'll just let him introduce himself and get started. And Tung has been a really fearless champion for this work, and really grateful that he's here and sharing with us how we can move forward in this election cycle together. So I'll pass it over to Dr. Tung Nguyen.
Thank you, Vina. Greetings, everyone. I'm Tung Nguyen again, chair of the Pivot board and one of the founders. First, I want to express my thanks to all of you who are spending your precious time with us today and going forward to make this country a better place. You are the heroes that we've been waiting for. I also want to thank the organizers of this March into Action event for all the hard work they put into this. So please give them a round of actual or virtual or whatever kind of Zoom applause you like. My task is to tell you briefly about Pivot. We were formed through a grassroots movement in 2017 with the explicit goal of defending our Vietnamese American communities and other people of color against the toxic effect of a Trump administration. Our mission is to engage and empower Vietnamese Americans for a just and diverse America. And our vision is to be a collective voice for progressive Vietnamese Americans, to engage and empower us through civic engagement and leadership development, and to support policies and candidates that are aligned with our values. We are a national organization with chapters in parts of the country. And while we have some part-time staff and grant funding, we are mostly driven by our donors and volunteers. You have provided us with the resources, which include money, time, skills, and ideas that have made Pivot the premier national Vietnamese American policy, advocacy, and political organization, whether on the right or the left. We have been so innovative and effective that we are looked upon as a model for other Asian American community progressive organizers. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. In addition to our election work, which we'll dive into a lot more, I want to highlight some other areas where we have been very effective and innovative. Viet Fact Check is the premier project in fighting disinformation among Asian Americans. Viet Am Health and Viet COVID is the only national project to address Vietnamese American health, and in particular, the COVID pandemic in its early days. Viet Am Vote is our voter engagement campaign. Our Vietnamese media activities help to provide materials for Vietnamese American press to counteract against the reaction materials that are prevalent there. Our translation team is so efficient that other organizations come to ask us to help them. We partner with many other organizations to engage in collective action. We also have a huge social media following, and we have a lot more. You will hear more later about Vietnam Stories, our project to use storytelling to heal intergenerational trauma. Next slide, please. Just a quick summary of what we did in 2020, which was the last major presidential election cycle. We had a lot of on-the-ground presence in multiple states, including Pennsylvania, Georgia, and many other states where we had pivot fellows working with local community organizations there. We supported many progressive Vietnamese American candidates, some of whom you may hear here today. Kathy Tran, who was the first Vietnamese American candidate we supported in 2017, was the first Vietnamese American elected to the state legislature in Virginia, wanted to come here, but she's actually working in the legislature today. And then, of course, we are supported by volunteers in the Vietnamese American community across the nation. Next, we're going to show a video summarizing some of that election work.
Established for us the Facebook and Instagram and Twitter following.
Other Pivot board members were all instrumental in getting this program up and running.
Voter registration. So shout out to your incredible team for creating this website, Vina Vo.
Vietnamese language fact-checking sources are thin on the ground. There are some. There is Viet Fact Check, a volunteer-led project.
We need those of us who are brave and strong to step up and speak up for us.
Hi everybody, thank you for having me on. I put my Joe Harris shirt on for y'all today.
On behalf of our board, we thank you for your labor of love.
All right, Pivot, getting together early on a Sunday morning. So glad to see you here.
If you've never canvassed before, it's a ton of fun.
Hi there, my name is Vinh. I'm a fellow with the Progressive Vietnamese American Organization.
We're going to try and make this at least a weekly conversation up until the election.
Kính chào quý vị. Welcome, friends.
My Asian immigrant mom doesn't understand why I'm so political, but she just has to look in the mirror. This November, I vote for moms like mine.
Hi, my name is Charles Fan. I'm the chef owner of the Slanted Door restaurant in San Francisco. I'm here today to speak to you about our election this fall.
Hello everyone, my name is Christine Ha. I'm best known for being the blind cook. If things like reproductive rights, women's rights are important to you, then you should be voting.
Hi, I'm Steph. I'm 27 years old and I'm a volunteer with Viet Fact Check. I've been volunteering since 2019 and I'm super excited to meet one of the co-founders, Nick, as we've never met in person.
Vì cuộc bầu cử 2020 xảy ra giữa đại dịch, số lượng lá phiếu bầu bằng thư sẽ ở mức kỷ lục.
Chẳng lẽ quý vị lại muốn bỏ phiếu cho một người quan tâm tới cổ phiếu, tự làm giàu cho mình hơn là tính mạng của người dân Georgia?
Hey, it's Tung Nguyen, the cookbook author. Are you voting this November? I sure am.
I'm State Representative Binh Nguyen. I am the first Vietnamese American to be elected to Georgia's General Assembly.
Please join me in registering and voting this year because it is more important than ever to make our voices heard.
Paid for by Pivot, the Progressive Vietnamese American Organization, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
Great. Well, I hope that raised your energy level. It raised mine. Of all our accomplishments, though, the one that I'm most proud is... Sorry, let me just finish here and then we'll switch over. Of our accomplishments, though, the one that I'm most proud is of all the Vietnamese Americans who told us that they found out their place and their people with us, that they didn't know there were other progressive Vietnamese Americans like them. In addition to the online and remote community that we have built, we have chapters for local engagement. For example, we have chapters in Northern and Southern California, Seattle, Texas, Georgia, and New York, and we have emerging chapters in Michigan and Nevada. One other note to address the elephant in the room for progressives in this election. Pivot's mission is focused on domestic policies, but sometimes international affairs become inextricably linked to our priorities in the US. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict and what happened on October 7th and in Gaza since has been a great tragedy. We grieve for the loss of civilian lives, particularly in Gaza, with an incomplete count of over 30,000 deaths, mostly women and children, and millions more facing starvation. Not since the American war in Vietnam have the civilian populations been bombed at such a tremendous and horrifying scale. We are very aware of the disproportionate burden that innocent civilians carry when their homeland is treated as a war zone. Pivot shares the serious critiques that many progressives have to the way the Biden administration has addressed this humanitarian calamity to date. Vice President Harris calling for a limited ceasefire was a step forward, and a full ceasefire with no more targeting of civilians by either side is the most urgent goal. However any of us feel about Israel, Palestine, and Gaza, it is important to note that a Trump election victory will give the Israeli government, led by his crony Netanyahu, more license to kill civilians, while also being detrimental to women and all the people of color in the US and internationally. That is why we are committed to defeating Trump in the 2024 election. I'll end with this. On the one hand, I'm disappointed that after 7 years, we are still battling Trump and his supporters. On the other, progressivism means fighting for our values and making change. This never stops. Pivot doesn't believe that despair and apathy is the way to change the world. We believe in hope, in engagement, and in empowerment and in action. We believe that only collective action can create the changes to make the world a better place. This is why we are so excited to have you here today, to help us in 2024 to defend our democracy, to protect women and people of color, and to address the climate crisis. I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Antom. I really appreciate your message. I know that's been on a lot of people's minds. Definitely was on my mind as well. And I just appreciate your insight and guidance on this and really important matter, and hope that everyone here, feels like they can have a place to share and talk about all the important issues that are going around, or that's going on in our world, without fear of repercussion. And I know that it's been hard to speak up about what's going on in Gaza right now. And so really want to thank you for delivering that message, and encourage us to continue talking about it and to have it in our discourse and not forget what is happening right now, but also really keeping that in mind, and also, finding the energy to continue fighting for our democracy in this upcoming election. So in that spirit, sometimes it's easy to feel like we can't do anything when the problems feel so big and so grand, but we are just one person, or maybe we're just a small group of people. And so I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who couldn't make it here today, but she wanted to send over this video. Susan Lieu has been a longtime supporter of Pivot. She has been at several of our Pivot events. So Susan Lieu is a Vietnamese American playwright, performer, activist, and author. She is best known for her one-woman show, 140 Pounds, where she details her mother's death from a botched surgery. She also has an upcoming novel, upcoming memoir called The Manicurist's Daughter. So as you listen to Susan's message, I hope you can see how, someone's a small group of collective people can really make a difference. So I'll let you hear from Susan and listen to her message.
In 1996, my mother died from a botched plastic surgery. And that's when my family learned about a concept called medical malpractice caps. That means in California, since 1975, your life is worth $250,000 if you died in a medical malpractice situation, irrespective of damages. And it's been a value that has been instated since 1975 and never adjusted to inflation. Because of that, insurance companies don't have accountability to weed out the bad apple doctors they represent. A few years ago, I banded with a group called Consumer Watchdog to help change a law so that these damages can actually have accountability, so that medical malpractice caps would actually increase and adjust to inflation. We passed that law, AB 35, in 2022, because we were a small group of committed volunteers who said, no, what is the status quo is not reflective of what we actually think it should be. That's why this election year is so important. There are a lot of people out there who want to be a politician and make laws. And the question is it reflective of something that will benefit our elders, benefit ourselves, and the unique situations and issues that face our community? We live in an attention economy, which means every single action that we do, email we send, phone call we make, the people we elect will matter. It's always been a small group of committed people that make change. Many hands make light work. So this does matter, and you do matter, and we all can actually make a difference. Because if not, we're gonna have the status quo, and we all know the status quo is not working.
I really love what she said about many hands make light work. And, you know, she mentioned about the small group of committed volunteers. Just within this room, we have 65 people who decided to come and show up today. And so just recognize that even if we do feel like there's only one of you or a few of you together today, we are 65. And that is a pretty big number, 65 fierce Vietnamese people, which I can't think of anything more terrifying than passionate, committed Vietnamese people. So on that note, just want to kind of lighten things up a bit. We got a little heavy, I'm getting a little bit in my feels. And so we're going to light things up with some trivia. So we're going to go, thank you. We got some pledges coming in from that. Thank you so much from folks who've seen the videos and the speeches. So we're going to do some voter impact trivia just to show you how much we, as this small group of folks here in this collective Zoom room, can really make an impact. So we'll go to the first question. The first question, and this is a fun trivia for you all. You'll have an opportunity to answer in the chat. What is the population of Vietnamese Americans in the US as of 2020 census? And there's a little asterisk there, meaning Vietnamese Americans, you may have other ethnicities mixed in there, but we're gonna see what people are thinking. Great. All right. So the answer is, can we share the results? It's the answer is 2.3 million. So that's how many Vietnamese people are in the US as of the 2020 census. So a pretty big population. On the next slide, we'll have another question. Is for the 2020 presidential race, what was the margin of victory in the 3 deciding states? So the 3 main deciding states, what was the margin of victory? So we'll put up a poll so you can see that next. So the answer for this one is 43,000. So wow, y'all are really good at this. Across all 3 states, yes. All right, next question. The next question is, okay, for the 2016 presidential race, what was the margin of victory in the 3 deciding states? The answer is C, 80,000. So pretty slim margin that we've been seeing from 2016, 2020. I see in there must be some PhD creating these. Yeah, these numbers are, it's so hard to fathom. All right, last question, y'all. What is the Vietnamese American population in Georgia as of the 2020 census? As you know from the last election, Georgia was a big battleground. And luckily we have some amazing friends within Pivot that have done so much organizing in Georgia. But we're always looking to Georgia as, you know, the battleground state, and we've just been seeing some really, really amazing work. So what is the Vietnamese American population in Georgia? We have most people guessing 150,000 of Vietnamese in Georgia. All right. Well, the answer actually is B, 70,000 people. So there's, you know, but it's just to really show you how important it is, you know, the amount of Vietnamese folks that we have within the US, how many are in Georgia, the margins of which certain elections are being won by. It really goes to show how critical the Vietnamese American vote is in getting out there and really influencing this election. So we did a fun little trivia just to give you an idea of how critical it is for all of us to mobilize and get our Vietnamese community members, elders, and family members to go out and vote. I managed to get my grandma to vote for the first time ever in 2020. I'm sure you all have a lot of stories as well in that way, or maybe of convincing your family members to vote Democrat as opposed to Republican for the first time. So we'll just have to continue with these. And I think it really starts with the personal, starts with the relationships, and starts with those individual stories. And so on that note, would really, I'd like to introduce to you all a really amazing person that I got a chance to meet in Seattle a few years ago at actually a Pivot Washington meeting, and want to introduce Tran. Han is an active participant and advocate within the community, serving as a Washington Human Rights Commissioner and chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Now she seeks to give back to the community that raised her as the director on the school board. And she intends that by being in this really important position, she can ensure that all students feel heard, seen, and represented. Thank you so much for being here, Han, and nice to see you again.
Cảm ơn chị Vina. I'll dive into it. Xin chào quý vị. Hello, everyone. So administrative duties here. My thoughts are my own and don't reflect any association or organization that I'm a part of. But now that that's out of the way, welcome to Pivot's March into Action virtual event. As we gather online this morning from the comfort of our homes or a friend's home, like in my case, we're connected by a shared purpose. It's an honor to be here with you and this panel alongside siblings who are doing the work. I'm coming to you from the Coast Salish lands, also known as Seattle, in Washington. So thank you, Pivot, for giving me an opportunity to speak with you all, for spending your Saturday morning here with us, and for organizing this event during such a crucial moment. Thank you for the thoughtful words, Antung, on Palestine and Israel. This stuff is on our minds and in our hearts. I do have 3 topics that I'm going to cover with you all today. One is our connectedness as a diaspora of Vietnamese communities all over the United States, the local elections and why they matter, and the primary presidential election. For some of us, it's already happened. For Washington, it's coming up here. So super, super critical things. First, how are we connected? Yes, obviously we are Vietnamese people, or we are friends of the Vietnamese community, but we also have aligned values. The path it took for me to get to you was windy. I started from a hospital in Saigon, where I was born embarking on a rickety boat escaping the US war in Vietnam to a refugee camp in the Philippines, to the shores of Washington to be here with you today. This story is similar to many in attendance. We are anomalies. Imagine all the events that needed to line up for you and me to exist in this space with the shared purpose of electoral politics. This was not left to chance, and we should not let elections be left to chance either. My role in the North Shore School Board has shown me the power of community engagement, especially engaging with the youth. And today, as part of the vibrant Vietnamese American community, we stand together ready to shape our collective future through the power of our votes. Election cycles always present us with critical choices, with this year being no exception. While the spotlight often shines on the presidential race, we must not overlook the profound impact of upcoming local and state elections in our daily lives. Our city councils, our school boards, and state representatives are where decisions are made that directly affect the quality of education, the safety of our streets, the maintenance of our public spaces, and the stewardship of our environment. This decision touches each of us, impacting the well-being and future prosperity of our communities. Participating in local elections empower us to influence how our tax is utilized at a local level, which development projects move forward, and what priorities are set within our educational system. It's our opportunity to ensure our community's needs and values are both represented and met. In Washington specifically, I know all of us are joining from various places. The dates for elections are critical and are coming up are March 12th, which is in a few days, is the presidential preference primary. August 6th is the primary election, and then November 5th is the general election. So please make sure to follow instructions on your ballot, especially for this presidential primary preference, which is coming up on March 12th. For this presidential preference primary, I myself have chosen to vote uncommitted delegates because Washington has that option. And for those of you who have not heard about Uncommitted Delegates campaign, it's a campaign that is standing up for human rights. So Tung was just talking about Palestine and Israel. Our Palestinian siblings are suffering under constant bombardment and starvation. As he said, there's over 30,000 people who have been killed, most of them actually women and children. It's believed that the death toll is even higher than that because people could not be recovered under the rubble. Historically, voting uncommitted delegates is a form of protesting the decisions that are currently made in the administration. The decision to use our precious vote to stand in solidarity with Palestinian siblings and for all of humanity is one that comes from a place of love, empathy, and the recognition of other people's humanity. Voting uncommitted delegates is not a vote for Trump, since this is a primary preference election, and you're actually choosing between Democratic candidates and not between a Democrat and a Republican. So please check out uncommittedwa.org for more information. I hope you join me in this movement and for joining this movement of love for our siblings. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Han. Thanks for being here. And just really amazing to see the candidates that Pivot endorses really take office and take a seat. And to learn more about Han and her amazing story, you can also check out her profile on Pivot's webpage. We sit down with her after she wins her election, and I got a chance to read that last night and just really felt inspired that you go back to the school district that you had grown up in and had such positive experiences with. All right. So Han shared a little bit about how you can get involved, the different ways in which we can show up in this election. And so I want to turn it over to Victoria Nguyen, who led the elections effort here to talk about why your participation is important and how you can begin getting involved. So Victoria?
Hi, everyone. Just wanted to say hi. Welcome, everyone, to the event today. Kind of going back to the quiz that we just had and looking at the numbers for Vietnamese Americans, I want to then tie that to some of our election strategy moving forward. So if we go into the next slide, as you can see, Vietnamese American votes can make a difference. So taking this example from 2020, you'll look at the deciding margin in Arizona. It's the equivalent of one person, and then you can look at the Vietnamese population. So that's 10,000, and Vietnamese population is the 40,000. So you can see that if we can push the Vietnamese population to go out and vote and vote for the candidates that we are looking at, then we can really make a difference. And you can see the same thing in Georgia. Wisconsin, it's a little bit less, but still, I think it's very close to the deciding margin that we had in 2020. So if we go into the next slide. So if we can get the Vietnamese American community engaged and motivated to vote, that is a really important part of how we bring together a victory. So 2 out of 3 Vietnamese Americans did not have any campaign contact in 2020 and 2022. 1 out of 5 Vietnamese Americans are undecided on Senate, House, and presidential races. That's the source of this is the 2020 and 2022 Asian American Voter Survey. So a lot of what Pivot will be working on is getting in contact with these Vietnamese Americans that haven't been contacted by any campaigns, and then working to provide messaging. We do digital ads, a lot of different outreach in order to reach this population. I'll say while we are not the largest minority group, you can see that Vietnamese Americans really can make a difference if we, really just reach out to them, engage them, and motivate them to vote. So if we go to the next slide. So based on population key priorities and resources, Pivot has selected a couple of different states that we're going to be focused on. I know a lot of people in this event today are from all over the country. So we are really looking for support kind of across the country. So everywhere from California to Nevada, Arizona, Texas, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan. These are the states that we are going to be focusing on. Of course, there's a lot of local races in the states that you are all in, and I'm sure that there's going to be work there as well. But these are the ones that we want to focus on specifically for the races that are there, and because they are swing states. So that is kind of a summary of what we're looking at. Let's go into the next slide. Yep. Okay, cool. That's all I wanted to talk through, and we'll pass it back to Vina.
Great, thanks, Victoria. Again, there's just, a lot of different ways that you can get involved, and it's really critical that we do. And also it's a great way to be more united with the Vietnamese community and get to know more people. We had mentioned, or Anton mentioned at the very beginning that, we have a big online community, but also these regional chapters. And Victoria and I actually met online in 2020. I actually met a lot of folks here online, and now we all are connected and friends. And whenever I go to different states across the US, there's always a Pivot member there to welcome me and to bring me into their fold. So a few years ago, a couple of us went to Seattle for our Seattle kind of a national convening, but it was hosted by it began the start of the Seattle, Washington chapter. And a really amazing stronghold there is Representative My-Linh, who is here with us today. Really excited to bring her, or really excited that she was willing to take time out of her busy schedule to come and share with us today, talk to us today. So I'll just share with you quickly her bio. Representative My-Linh immigrated to the US at the age of 15, and she and her family settled in Washington State, where she received a world-class education from the public school system. She is the first refugee elected to the state legislature. And before the legislature, she served in many roles within her community, including the Bellevue School Board. So I really love seeing there's like 2 school board connections here really talking about the importance of small local elections and then what, that influence and that experience can lead to. So thank you so much, Representative Tai, for being here. And thanks for all that you do for the Seattle, Washington chapter. I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning. Thank you, Vina. That's a very lovely introductions, totally tie into the whole connecting us, the Vietnamese American, and our nation. Hi, David. Oh my God, from Texas. I sincerely hope that one of these days I will get to meet all of my siblings across the nations in person, share whatever your favorite food is that you have put in the chat. So I expect if I come visit you, you better make the food for me. And I promise I eat anything and everything that you make. This is a loving space. This is my language of love. Being able to see many of the faces in this space. I really just want to share quickly the reason why I ran for office. We know that many of those who are currently serving as elected across the nations are next generation children of refugees from Vietnam. And once in a while, you hear like, oh, there's a refugee, like a refugee who elected in office. For me, I have always am interested in politics, and but the idea of being an armchair playing politics at armchairs and criticizing what people do and don't was kind of fun. And I've done that for a while because politics and policies truly impact our everyday's life. But honestly, I have not ever seen myself running for office and actually being elected. So after 10 years now, serving in the elected positions, I'm still pinning myself. When I first ran for school board director, honestly, it seeded from serving as a volunteer. And so my first point sharing with you is being a volunteer is incredible. It build your knowledge, it build your passion, and it's lead you to places where you get to move your passion into action. So as a volunteer, providing scholarships to students in the school district that my children attended, that year I've learned that of those who apply for the scholarship locally, they identify themselves as undocumented students. And that was a year DREAM Act died at federal level. I remembered running around, knocking on as many doors as possible, looking for ways to support these students who somehow didn't meet all the criteria needed to get the scholarship that we offered. And to my dismay, there was none. And that is in Washington State, a very known blue state, a very known state that truly like all supportive of DACA, of people who came to this country and to take refuge, to find a place that they can live and build their life, like many of us or many of our parents. That was a fuel for me to decide to run as school board director. The second time I decided to leave the school board director position and run as state representative was when the president of the United States calling people like myself, like my parents, thief and thugs, and those who would come here and be criminals and destroy the fabric of this society. I want to set the narrative straight. I want to tell our story. I want to tell my stories, because you know what? My children deserve to be proud of their parents. And I would also say that it's all seeded from what is really near and dear to you, because that is how you spring into action. The whole idea of loving others is great, but what pushes you to do anything, it has to be so near to you. And for me, it was about my children. They cannot live and grow up in a nation, in a society, in the place where this is the only place they call home. They were born here. That they would be ashamed of their parents, they would be ashamed of their ancestor. And that is not true. That is not factual. And it's up to us to speak our truth. It's up to us to tell our stories. And that was why I ran and served as a state representative. I know that our communities came from a very difficult place, a place where the idea of engaging in politics seemed to be a far reach. I was told, first, being a girl, being a woman, you shouldn't run for office. Hun and I, and many others, you saw in the video, and certainly Congresswoman Tiffany Murphy was definitely the woman in our Vietnamese connections show that we run and serve because we care. It doesn't matter which genders you are, but you care. And we, the people who run and serve and be elected, really couldn't do our job without you. You are the critical voice, the critical force. You are the winds behind, under our wings. We could not do a lot of things, a lot of policies, a lot of movement if it weren't for you. So I first want to make sure that you know your place of importance in our work. Secondly, I will ask you, if you decided not to run and serve in the up and down ballot, whether it's local commissions or elected positions, or volunteer at the polling place or election place, be that volunteer. Be the one who, when somebody in your area asking for you to go out and knock on door, do phone banking, write a postcard, because every single actions of ours, when it's pulled together, when it become collective actions, it became the storm that no one can stop. You give me hope. You make my heart sing. You are my love language. Stay you and bring a friend next time we meet. Thank you for giving me these opportunities and yet supporting Pivot.
Thank you so much, My-Linh. That was amazing. Wow, I've never had anyone say that I'm their love language. That's beautiful. That is poetic, y'all. Thank you so much for saying all that. Thank you for sharing with us your story, why you're doing this, and thanks for bringing this from a place of hope. I think that's what's really needed right now, is feeling hopeful in this election. And we've really seen time and again, like when Vietnamese Americans organize, when progressives organize, we do see the results. It's hard to see that sometimes, but you being here, you being the first refugee to be elected into the state legislature is proof point that when we come together, when we are authentic in our message, when we are transparent in what we hope to do, and we can rally people behind messages of love and hope, that these things are possible. And really appreciate your message of you just really wanting to build this better life for your children. I don't have children of my own, but I have nieces. So I'm also hoping to leave the world a better place for them and for all of your children as well. So thank you so much for that beautiful message. Always so inspiring to hear you speak. We are at the hour. This time has gone by so fast. Really grateful for all y'all sticking with us. I just want to do a quick update that already within this hour, we have raised $5,000. So thank you all so much. This money goes directly into serving all the election efforts. So just really amazing to show you what can happen when we have a group of Vietnamese folks in a room together who are really compelled to either win fish sauce or a trip to Hawaii. I love the duality. We contain multitudes. And so keep those pledges coming. Maybe we can double it to 10,000 by the end of this meeting. Who knows? I'm keeping hope alive. So we wanted to do a quick stretch break, but we are running a little on time. So I will encourage you all to stand up if you need to, shake it out if you need to, do it at your own will. And also don't forget to breathe. I feel like as I'm hearing people speak, I get so captivated and moved, I'm forgetting to breathe. So spend some time taking some deep breaths, go grab some water, grab some tea, grab some coffee, because we have some more exciting speakers for you all and some more ways you can get involved. And to kick off that effort, I'm going to introduce Tung Nguyen, who will share with you how you can actually, we've been talking about all these goals. He's going to be sharing with you how can we accomplish these goals? How do we get to these? How do we win this upcoming election by mobilizing the Vietnamese American and progressive community? So, and Khanh, I'll pass it on to you to share with us how we can do all that.
Yep. Thank you so much, Vina. And it's going to be hard to be more exciting than My-Linh, but I'm going to try. So I wanted to, to show the next slide, which you have seen before, which is the slide that Victoria created that talked about our strategy for the 2024 election. And, we are doing something very straightforward. We're trying to reach out to every Vietnamese American who share our values, to volunteer, to act, to vote, and there's so much at stake in this election. And thank you, My-Linh, for really reminding us again what the stakes are, not just for us, but as a parent for my children and for Vina's nieces and nephew. And we're going to focus on these states because these are the key states. This is where we think we can make a difference, right? And we're not being subtle about this. The margins are very small, and we can make a difference, and so that is why we're so glad to see you here. And you heard Susan say, changes are made by small committed group. That is very inspiring. So we'll share with you what is the work that we're doing, and you'll hear directly from the people who are doing the work. So much of this is about the message, and you hear messaging in politics all of the time. But what's different about this is that we have Vietnamese Americans speaking to one another, and I to show you what it looks like, I'd like to play a very short video that one of our members made for the 2020 election. And if you can play this, Jadyn.
My Asian immigrant mom doesn't understand why I'm so political. She doesn't worry about policies. She worries I won't find a nice boy to marry and take care of me. She doesn't know her legislators, and she definitely doesn't want to talk to them. But my Asian immigrant mom knew how to raise 4 independent daughters and send us all to college. When I was growing up, my mom worked 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. Her reward for raising me, her youngest, to adulthood was losing her Medicaid health insurance, and as contracted labor, she had no employer-sponsored health insurance, no matter the hours she worked. Mothers like mine are now protected from coverage gaps because of the ACA, but all that and more is at risk, especially for immigrant women. My Asian immigrant mom doesn't understand why I'm so political, but she just has to look in the mirror. This November, I vote for moms like mine.
Thank you, Lynn. Yeah, I want to thank Lynn for sharing that. And I'm sorry to the point that Vina made. That was not light, but it is very important. And I still remember when I first saw that, and it's an example of the power that we have speaking to one another. So I wanted to make the point also that even with these very powerful messages, you know, there's a huge amount of work that it takes to get this out there, to reach all of the people that we need to reach. And so you'll hear about some project that we're doing. You'll hear from Carlos, who will talk about the online digital ads work. Vinh, you have seen Vinh in one of the previous video to talk about the Fellows program. And Steph, you have also seen in one of the previous video to talk about Viet fact check. So it's my honor now to introduce Carlos, who is a seasoned ads professional who's been working with us since the 2020 election. Sorry, I'm revealing my age a bit there. Carlos started his work in ads at Google more than 17 years ago, and he's been working on political ads for more than 10 years. Carlos is now living in LA with his wife Cindy, his sons Xavier, and 2 dogs. So over to you, Carlos, and thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you all for being here. The 2020 elections were full of exciting accomplishments for us. One that I'm really proud of was our ability to reach 2.7 million Vietnamese Americans. They saw and heard your stories on TV, radio, internet, and thousands of mobile apps. If you had internet in 2020, odds are you saw at least one of our stories. Fast forward to 2024, the urgency remains and the goals are the same. We want to reach as many Vietnamese Americans with as many of your stories as possible. As we've all experienced, marketing and advertising is an important part of the political process, and we find it's at its best when it reflects your unique experiences. That might mean seeing other Vietnamese Americans in images, seeing cultural terms in ads, or hearing about a relatable experience in a video. When all of these pieces come together, the impact can be significant, but none of this is possible without you. You are the human side of our digital efforts. If you have skills in graphic design, video creation and editing, advertising, or you're just a creative spirit, we'd love the opportunity to share your stories and creations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carlos. And now I'd like to introduce you to Vinh. You've seen Vinh in one of the previous video. Vinh was a fellow for us in Pennsylvania in 2020. And if you could move the slide up one, perhaps. In 2022, Vinh ran all of our fellows program. He is still currently in Philadelphia, where in addition to the work that he does for Pivot, he's worked to establish a new federal billing code with the Center for Medicare and Medicaid to help fund street medicine. And in the fall, he's going to be attending medical school. So over to you, Vinh.
Thanks, Thanh. Yeah, we can play this quick little video that I made. It's for like recapping some of the fellows' work.
To save democracy and protect Vietnamese values, one group of young Vietnamese Americans stood up above the rest. They were the Pivot Fellows. The battle for democracy continues this year, and the Pivot Fellows have shown to be community leaders able to advocate and promote progressive values across the country. Consider joining Pivot for the 2024 elections.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, please. Thanks for indulging me with my really into 90s vibe lately. But yeah, go to the next slide. Talk a little bit about the fellows. Yeah, so like Thanh said, I was a fellow back in 2020, and I loved it so much that I helped coordinate it in 2022. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful program that allows young Vietnamese Americans to work with like-minded individuals across the country, really engage in civic engagement and election work, and work directly with API communities, really with an emphasis on Vietnamese American groups. And I think it's such a great program. So if you know any young Vietnamese Americans who want to be civically engaged and involved for this year's 2024 election, you could definitely use any connections or networking you might have please send them our way. We'd love to work with them and help train them up. This program really gave me a ton of foundational skills that have allowed me to, now pursuing medicine this fall, really emphasize my work with the Vietnamese American community. It's a really great program that will definitely give you a lot of skills and a lot of great connections. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, if you're interested, please feel free to message me. I'm happy to put my email in the chat too.
Thank you so much, Vinh. And next, I'd like to introduce you to Steph. Steph has been involved with Pivot and Viet Fact Check since the 2020 election. She's written over 15 articles about Viet Fact Check and Viet COVID. And she was recently featured in 2022 in the PBS series Moment of Truth. Steph?
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. For me, Viet Fact Check is such a labor of love. And as many folks kind of highlighted today, joining Pivot for me was being able to connect with like-minded individuals. And I didn't realize before Pivot that there were so many other progressive Vietnamese Americans all over the country who really care not just about our future, but also the future of this nation. And this work means so much to me because we are able to provide intergenerational conversations. And this was highlighted back in 2020 when a former board member, Hugh, kind of shared that he was able to print out an article we wrote with Viet Fact Check about the importance of elections and share it with his dad in Vietnamese and English for him. And it was the first time his dad was able to vote. And as a second generation child myself, I don't have the language skills to talk to my elders about why voting is important. So having a source like Viet Fact Check is so important for our communities. And to have kind of the intergenerational dialogue. And that for me is what Pivot stands for. And it's always impressive to me to see like how much we've reached. And I think from conversations like Sao Lee, who is like our new lead with Viet Fact Check, we've had over like 10,000 page views and 5,000 visitors a month, which is incredible to the testament of all the articles we've written, and especially with Viet COVID, when COVID was hitting so many of our communities and there was so much misinformation going on, that if you're interested in writing articles or interested in like researching more about what's going on in the world, I would strongly encourage to reach out to myself, to Sally, to Nick Nguyen, who actually is one of the founders of Viet Fact Check. As this is an incredible organization, and like the story of Hugh really reminds me why this work is so important. Back to you, Ken.
Yep. Thank you so much, Steph. I think I should hand it back to you. Yes, Vina?
I was hoping you would give me a minute on time to collect myself, but sure, yes. Thank you so much, Steph, for sharing that with us, and really appreciate all the amazing work that Viet Fact Check has done. And again, this, Viet Fact Check was this project that someone's like, there's a lot of misinformation out there. We got to do something about it. And people just came together and made it happen. Again, a small committed group of volunteers who just felt so impassioned and committed to doing something like this. And it's grown into something so wonderful and so beautiful. So thank you, Sally, for leading up the charge now. I know that it is not an easy effort, and we really appreciate all the things that you all have been doing. It is really well known across a lot of progressive communities. So really grateful that this project that was started out as an idea with several people has blossomed into something so profoundly important for all elections. As we know, as it is so easy to create misinformation nowadays, this work is more important than ever. And so with that, I just want to share some really exciting news. We initially had I think a $15,000 match for all donations, but that someone just behind the scenes raised it. We are matching up to $25,000 now. So all of your donations will be matched up to $25,000. So that is a huge shift from 15 to 25. And I believe we don't have the exact numbers for the donations that have come through, but I think we're at probably, I think we are at 8,000 so far with some of the new donations that have gone through. So thank you all so much for your generosity, your kindness, and thank you for the folks who are sharing the stories. I think it's really getting across how critical this time is and how important it is for us to be involved in this time. And so with that, just want to transition over to introducing you all to our next guest. Tung Nguyen was also endorsed by Pivot. Kenny is a Colorado native and son of Vietnamese refugees. Before running for office, he served as the executive assistant to the Colorado's Lieutenant Governor Diane Primavera. In 2022, he made history as the first Asian American elected to the Broomfield City Council. So just really amazing that we're having the first, the first of their kind come and represent. So it's just really showing the persistence and commitment of the Vietnamese community and all that we're doing. So welcome, Kenny. Thank you so much for being here. Really excited to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Vina, and I'm really happy to be here, folks. Thank you so much. Obviously, a lot of inspiring stories, and it is, great to see a lot of Vietnamese faces here. Like Vina said, my name is Kenny Nguyen, and or Kenny Nguyen, and obviously, my Vietnamese is similar to a lot of other stories, not as strong as my elders, my father, and my mother. But just to talk a little bit about myself, I am Colorado's first Vietnamese elected official. I am Broomfield's first Asian American official. I was born and raised here in Colorado, so not too far from, the West Coast, but still right in the middle of the country. And, this community is very, very small. Broomfield has a growing Asian American population. About 8-9% of Broomfielders are Asian American. So it's a big deal that I was elected this November, and it was with the help of Pivot. So while looking for resources, while looking for help and endorsements, Pivot was one of the few organizations that I saw that aligned with my values and with my, my personal story. And obviously, I got a lot of resources from Pivot, and I had a lot of opportunities from my local Vietnamese American population. My home village community, the group that organized themselves when they moved here from Vietnam, the My-Linh people, or the My-Linh community, they came together and they endorsed me as well, and they also donated money to me. So both helping Pivot and with local, groups, I was able to run for office, and I did run against an opponent who is the opposite of Pivot's values, someone who was anti-immigration, believe in the 2020 Great Lie, and it was scary because we could have elected someone that was not inclusive and someone who was anti-immigrants and didn't believe in a lot of values that I cherish. And so, my story is very fortunate. I still work for the Lieutenant Governor Diane Primavera, and even though my father is not what I would describe as progressive, he did vote for me and was very engaged. And so it's a big deal to get that messaging out. So obviously, this is an important year, 2024. We have to get as much of our, members of our communities to be supportive and active in this election, because a lot of folks who are coming in from Venezuela, from throughout the world, their stories are our stories. They are escaping from prosecution, from economic disparity. It is scary to see the rhetoric that we have right now. And we have folks who literally, and even in Colorado, people think Colorado is blue. It isn't. There's still people who believe in very dangerous and radical ideas that are, something that is crazy to see out loud. And, I've only been in city council for about 4 months, and I'm still learning a lot, but I'm relatively young as well. I'm actually not the youngest city council member in Broomfield. I'm actually the second youngest, and obviously our city council is very progressive and very young, but we still get people coming out and saying that they don't want to see immigrants or people of color come to their communities because they're worried about changing demographics or being, it's scary. But again, I do want to say it on a positive note. My family, my culture, my people, there's a lot of things I want to thank here, but I do want to thank Pivot for their endorsement, for helping me get elected. And obviously putting Broomfield and Colorado on your map here, because it starts so small, but things can get big, and I hope that my story could inspire other Vietnamese Americans to run for office, and not just from Colorado, but throughout the entire country. So I just want to say thank you so much, y'all, for having me to speak, and I'm very honored to be part of this amazing community, and I'm hoping that we not throughout throughout this organization itself, but throughout all the Vietnamese Americans, to keep bringing progressive candidates out there and trying to get more folks elected. And let's go fight win. So thank you so much again for having me.
Oh, thanks so much, Kenny. And also, I love your background. You got everything. You got the
I got everything.
You got the flag. It's very multifaceted.
Yeah, and I'm a big Colorado fan. So go Nuggets, go Avs,
All the
Broncos.
Colorado,
It's rough.
yeah.
It is rough right now with being a Broncos fan, but we got a Super Bowl a couple years ago, so I appreciate you. And I see a Go Warriors comment. So we'll see you in the West Championship. So thank you so much again for having me. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much for being here. And thanks for speaking out on, just being young and taking the chance to run for office, because it is something that's so important to you. And I think one of my favorite parts about working within Pivot is it is very intergenerational. We get to really connect across different generations, learn from one another, sharing insights and sharing wisdom. And I've learned so much from people who are older than me and also folks who are younger than me. So speaking of that, I would like to introduce you all to Jadyn, who is our new Pivot Elections Coordinator. Jadyn has recently just joined us, but has been such an amazing addition to this team and has been working very hard to be the technical back end. So thank you, Jadyn, for all the work that you've been doing. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Vina. I appreciate it. And thank you all for being here and being here on a Saturday morning. Appreciate that. I just wanted to touch briefly on the journey to the election, March 9th, which is our kickoff event, which you are here attending. March to July 2024, we do voter registration, volunteer recruitment, election team planning and strategy, fellows recruitment. In August 2024, we do voter persuasion initiatives. There's also a voter registration push, digital ads. And in September 2024, we do the Launch into Action event, which also includes voter persuasion efforts, text banking, canvassing, digital ads, and direct mail. In October to November 2024, also do voter persuasion efforts. So we do the text banking, canvassing, digital ads, direct mail. And then November 5th is the election day. So then you can get involved with us. These are several roles that you can become involved with us, as well as our sign up to volunteer link. To touch on some roles, we have the voter engagement. You can do the text and phone voter outreach, social media, and content. There's the graphic design, video translation, policy. We do the policy and research, Viet fact check, and operations, fundraising and grants, and project management. And these are our links if you wanted to take a picture of the screen. This will also be shared out in the future as well, to volunteer and also to donate.
Great. Thank you so much, Jadyn. Just leaving the URL code up a little bit so you all can see or can link to the different ways to connect. As you saw from the previous slide, if Jadyn, you don't mind flipping back real quick, there are tons of ways to get involved. So there's really something here for everyone. If you have experience in social media or digital ads, if you have experience in traditional media and translating in Vietnamese and English, our translation team, shout out to them, is just truly excellent. They are so fast. They are so amazing. And so we just have really great people come together, share their skills. Folks from all different types of professions, all types of different educational backgrounds come. And if you don't know what you can do, but you're like, I just want to help, please also reach out. We will find a place for you. There is just so many things that we do. The breadth of Pivot's portfolio is huge. And so there's really here a place for everyone to get involved. So these are all the different ways. You can definitely see all of these by signing up and checking in on this link. bit.ly/election volunteer. We could really use your support. You all, just by being here, has been such a support already. We've been, just by being your presence, your comments, it's really generating a lot of energy that I'm feeling across just in this Zoom room. And also your donations as well. Your donations have really been coming through. I think last time we checked, it's been rising. We're getting close to that 10,000 that I manifested earlier at hour 1. So thank you all so much. We're actually getting there. And like I mentioned, the match is at now $25,000. So it went from 15 and in the duration of this meeting, it went to 25. So just to show the power of your presence and just by being here, what's possible. So thank you all so much for that. To continue the excitement and to continue the momentum, I'd like to introduce another special guest. You all may recognize him. Viet Tung Nguyen is a university professor, Errol Arnold Chair of English and Professor of English, American Studies and Ethnicity and Comparative Literature at the University of Southern California. Go Trojans. His novel, The Sympathizer, is a New York Times bestseller and won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction. He has recently released his memoir. And although all of his books are really amazing, I think his best work is probably Chicken of the Sea, in which he co-wrote with his then 5-year-old son, Ellison, and it's illustrated by Tibui and her son. So another intergenerational connection and people coming together to build something beautiful across generations. And also some exciting news. The first episode of The Sympathizer airs April 14th on HBO. So there might be a pivot watch party, so stay tuned. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Viet. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Vina. Hi, everybody. I'm calling in from a hotel room, so the lighting is not that great. It disturbs me, but it's such a pleasure to be here with Pivot. As you have heard, I'm more of a writer than someone who's involved in electoral politics, but I've always been deeply committed to politics and change ever since I was an undergraduate at Berkeley and majored in English and ethnic studies and realized how important it was for us as Vietnamese, as Asian Americans, as people of color to tell our own stories. I came to the understanding that I had grown up in the United States as a Vietnamese refugee living under conditions of narrative scarcity, by which I mean almost none of the stories were about us. And then when a story about us would come along, we would freak out like, oh my God, there's a story about us. And that was so unfair to that story and to that storyteller because no story can hold the weight of an entire population, just as no politician or no change agent can hold the weight of an entire population. And my struggle has always been to move from conditions of narrative scarcity to narrative plenitude. Narrative plenitude is when almost all of the stories are about you. And so people who live under conditions of narrative plenitude, you know what their attitude is about stories when a story comes along that isn't about them or misrepresents them in some way. Typically, their reaction is, well, it's just a story. And they can say that because they have 1,000 other stories to turn to. That's what I want for Vietnamese Americans is narrative plenitude, where there are thousands of stories about us. There are thousands of people leading us in different ways. I don't think we're there yet, but we're sort of getting there. And especially with literature, we have more and more Vietnamese American writers offering different kinds of stories. So if you don't like my books, God help you, but you can turn to someone else's books. You have choices, you have options. And I think that's very much what I do with my writing, but my own activism, and certainly what Pivot is doing in terms of moving us to a position where we have a diversity of political viewpoints and political leadership and political activists out there representing the Vietnamese American community. So I think the work that we do is crucial at the electoral level, certainly, but also at the level of narrative change and at the level of transforming our communities by giving them the sense that, in fact, they do have the possibility of seizing control of their own stories, whether it's through writing them or making them, or whether it's through things like building community organizations and building community power, as Pivot is committed to. Now, the stakes, I just came into this. I'm sure everybody's been talking about the stakes that are before us today. Certainly, the necessity of being against Trump and everything that he represents, which would be generally bad for immigrants, refugees, people of color, the poor, the working class, and so on. But I think that the divisions in this country that we've seen magnified during the period of the Trump administration up until the present is a division, or at least partly around the narrative of the country. Who are we as a country? Who are we as Americans? What is our past? How does it connect to our present and our future? And so narrative is not accidental. Narrative is fundamental, because when I talk about narrative scarcity and narrative plenitude, I'm not only talking about faces and representatives and stories. What I'm saying is we can't actually achieve narrative plenitude until we have economic plenitude. Stories don't just appear because someone writes them. There are whole industries that people don't see that are making these stories and making these authors and artists visible. And so talking about narrative and narrative change, I'm really talking about symptoms that are indicative of how unequal the country is in so many ways. We're not going to have narrative plenitude until we have economic plenitude. So there's a lot at stake in the current election, from the question of narrative and all that it represents about who has access to the means of production and representation in this country. So I don't have to convince any of you about that. I want to end, however, with a note about how crucial it is to recognize the diversity of issues that are at stake in this election and within the Vietnamese American community. I think probably it's true that there's a consensus in this virtual space against Donald Trump. I would hope, and the recognition that in a two-person election, Joe Biden is what many people will vote for. But there are many, many different issues at stake here. And I will say that I just voted in the California presidential primary, and I voted uncommitted. And the reason I voted uncommitted is, at this point, it's a symbolic vote, but for me, it's an important symbolic vote, because in addition to all the other issues around domestic politics, representation, inequities, and so on, concern an organization like Pivot and concern me, we're also a country that is, in my opinion, has historically done some really terrible things in terms of our foreign policy and who it is that we support. My interpretation of Vietnamese American history is that we Vietnamese Americans wouldn't have existed if it weren't for many complicating factors, but including what the United States did in Vietnam. So I'm against Israel's war on Gaza. I'm against the fact that the United States is the major supporter for Israel and its policies in terms of economic and financial and military investments. It's our bombs that are being used on Palestinian civilians. I cannot separate that from all the domestic issues that concern us as Vietnamese Americans. I don't think they're separable at all, but that's my interpretation. So I want to at least leave that space open for anybody out there who feels ambivalence about the bipartisan nature of our politics, that we're being forced to do an either or choice. And that may be the choice that many of us make in the end. However, I think there's so much space left over for other kinds of activism and voices and engagements and nuances that all of us can choose for ourselves. And so I think for myself personally, I recognize the bipartisan, bipolar nature of our electoral politics. I also recognize that the world is much more complex than that, and that each of us needs to make a nuanced response to the moral, political, geopolitical landscape that we're all facing. So go pivot, do the work that I believe in as well. And for all of you out there, stay true to your political, ethical, and moral visions.
Thank you so much, Viet. Wow, that's a lot of plenitudes. I pronounced it incorrectly, plentitudes, but really appreciate your message there. And I know that you taking a stance on Israel and Gaza, came at a cost to you. So really appreciate you being very early and forthcoming about that, and appreciate you being a pioneer and always speaking up for not only Vietnamese people, but all marginalized folks in general. It's important to have more voices speak up for that. So appreciate all that you do and the work that you do. And Tom also put in the chat, what about plenitudes as it relates to donations? So just putting that thought out there as Anton put in the chat. But thanks for being here, and we're excited to have a watch party to see the sympathizer live on the screen. I'm sure it's going to be it's going to be a great watch. So maybe some of the regional chapters will have some watch parties for that. So congrats again on that. Tung is our operations manager, and there's lots of ways to get involved. So I'll pass it on to Tung to share with you about Viet Am stories.
Yeah, thank you, Vina. We want to invite everyone here to register for Pivot's Vietnamese American Stories Project. You see a little bit of the description on the screen here. But the basic idea is that in addition to the urgent issues of the immediate election, we are also building like the long-term power that comes from creating our cultural narratives. And so Pivot is partnering with Diaspora Vietnamese Artists Network. And we are going to hold a series of 4 workshops in May to June of this year, where folks can learn how to learn interviewing techniques and storytelling techniques to create caring dialogues with our families. And the hope is, one, is to gather Vietnamese American stories and to create that plenitude that we had just been talking about. And 2, at the same time, to explore the ways that doing so can be healing for our community, you know? And so please use the QR code right here on the screen and register for it. The workshops are free. And we are, we're going to be working with some of our brightest creative minds from DVAN, which was started by our very own Viet Tung Nguyen, and train up our community and hopefully start that healing process. Thank you, Vina.
Thank you, Tuan. I'm so excited that you are joining the Pivot team. And yes, please register for Viet Am Stories. I'm so thrilled to have seen this project grow over time. It was something that we started just really something super small, thinking about how we can get more stories. This actually was birthed in Seattle when we all got together and thought about how important it was to tell more stories. So super excited that we're able to partner with the Diaspora Vietnamese Artists Network to do this, to really show how more organizations, more Vietnamese groups can come together and to unite and to bring folks together in this, so that we're not fighting at this alone, and we're doing it in a way that really inspires hope and inspires that joy and progress that we all wish to see. And speaking of community builders, speaking of people who inspire joy and hope and really, not only talks the talk, but really does the work. I'm so proud to introduce our final speaker, Dr. Quach, who is a proud Vietnamese refugee, health advocate, and president of Asian Health Services, a community health center in Oakland, and founding board member of Pivot. Tu is a lot of other things, but I'll keep the bio short and let her speak to you all. Tu really is that huge community builder. Like, you will see her always outside doing the work. I actually got my first COVID vaccine at an Asian Health Services site. I felt invincible afterwards, and it was through Tu's amazing efforts with all of her volunteers and all of her staff. They are constantly fighting the hard fight. Tu is someone that once you meet her, you will follow her into battle no matter what. So it doesn't matter. She's the general. She'll tell you what to do, and you'll do it. And so I really got involved with Pivot because of Tu and some of the other founding board members. So really look forward to you all getting to know Tu better and getting involved with Pivot, so that you can also join this charge. So I'll pass it on to Tu to take the stand, or take the stage, not the stage.
Thank you so much, Vina. What an awesome and flattering intro. And I have to say, I'm sitting here and going, it was a bad idea to agree to close on this one, because so many amazing, amazing stories, powerful journeys that were shared with us. And I'm so grateful to be here, to have been a part of Pivot. As I was reflecting on what to say today, it's really hard. And I love hearing all the personal stories that were shared, and they're inspiring. For myself, sometimes I have to go outside of my own families, of my own community, so that I can better understand, who we are. And so as I thought about what to say, I wanted to share some profound lessons that I have learned very recently. So last week, a small group of us working at community health centers had the honor of visiting the different islands of Hawaii to talk to patients and community members of different community health centers, serving mainly Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders from Micronesia. I heard the pain and anger in their voices as they talked about land taken away from them, from the islands of Hawaii to Chuuk and the Marshall Islands. I also heard so much love and aloha in their voices as they shared about their people and ancestry.
We ended this 3-day trip sitting down with the people of Maui, the very ones that ran into the Lahaina fire to help their people. This was actually the very first time this group even had a chance to sit down and reflect. And we were honored that they were willing to share with us. They were still very traumatized by all of it. These aren't the people you see on TV or the news. They've kept out of the spotlight simply because they don't want to be labeled as heroes. Rather, just the local people who love their community. These are the local doctors, the nurses, the pharmacists, and the community health workers who saw the Native Hawaiian people dying, their family homes burning down, and ran into the fire. And what they told us put us all into tears. They talked about the big name organizations, the disconnected government, and even the celebrities who parachuted in but weren't able to connect with the people. Rather, in some cases, were obstructive and, in their words, initially useless. These humble people of Maui refer to themselves as the first and the last responders. Long after the TV cameras are turned off, they will remain to rebuild and care for their community. And they shared so many profound learnings and reflections, which I think we in Pivot can benefit from. They talked about how scared and lost they felt when they first came and how they didn't know what they were doing, but they knew that their love for their own people made them show up and stay. In these hard times, there are always the questions of what are we doing and will this have meaningful impact? But they said they ran into the fires, even with all the self-doubts that they had. They put their lives, their jobs, and now their mental health on the line. And to be really honest, all those things are still on the line for them. They kept saying there was so much chaos and there was no plan, but they knew they had to be there because they knew that only they would know how to connect to their own people. They wept in front of all of us, saying that their love for the Native Hawaiian people slowly gave them clarity on what they needed to do because they knew others parachuting in would not know what they know about their people. One of them profoundly said, "You really know who people are when you see who runs into the fire and who runs away from the fire." Now, I know those are the Maui fires, a very tragic fire, and we're here talking about the 2024 elections. Yet, to be honest, they each have an urgency to them. As I sat and heard their love for their people and how their people have and continue to be manipulated, exploited, and disrespected, I thought about our own Vietnamese American community. Will we run into the fires as we watch our communities be fed lies, misled to vote against their own interests? We all know that this work is hard and thankless, be it phone banking or knocking on doors. But will our love for our own community move us to be the first and last responders for them in the elections? Or will we leave it up to the big name organizations who parachute in to do the work without really understanding the need and who likely will disappear soon after the elections are over? Last week, I didn't just hear from brave and courageous people. I heard from scared, tired, burnt out people who are still recovering from so much trauma, the trauma of the fires and the trauma before the fires. But I also heard love and pride in their own ancestry and the need to lock arms to fight and to rebuild. They know too well that this will take a long time, but they only see one path forward for their people. I hope we too can learn from them what is worth fighting for. And I want to say that I look forward to running with all of you into the fire of the 2024 elections. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. Thank you. That's so beautiful. And it's the year of the dragon. So that's also something to consider, is running into that fire. And I really appreciate that quote that you shared, the first and last responders. You know, I think some of us got into 2020 thinking, let's do the thing. And then we can rest afterwards. But here we are in 2024. And, you know, a lot of folks have stayed and we're continuing to rally more people So really thank you so much for sharing that personal experience that you've had and really relating it back to our cause. And I think that's what's beautiful about stories and why it's so important is that we can see the shared stories and the shared history with different communities and learn from them and get their wisdom and insight into how to move forward. And so just hearing you share that makes me feel like, even if we are tired or burnt out, if we move together as a community out of love for our people and our heritage and our, in the future that's to come, that we can make it together as long as we come together. And like My-Linh said earlier, just, looking towards the future and what we can bring. And like Susan said, many hands make the task feel lighter. I'm just seeing a lot of ways in which this group here, the 63 of us remaining, we've held strong, what all that we can do. And so I want to thank you all so much for being here. We're going to share a quick screen on all the things that you can do to be a part of this journey together, to be a part of this community, this part of this political family. Nationwide. There will be regional chapters as well. And so there's ways for you to interact in person, but also ways in which you can connect remotely. And there's always opportunities to get involved. And so this is what you can do now. The first is volunteer on our elections committee and put your skill set to use. Again, remember there was social media, traditional media, translations, project management, finance, all the things. There's something for everyone. Connect your friends and family to this work and the importance of making their voice heard at the ballot box. Especially, this is a great way to engage your family members, your elders, who maybe weren't as engaged before because they didn't know how, or they were worried that they'd get called for jury duty, which is something my family was worried about. There's different ways in which you can engage them, and I think it's a really beautiful and powerful thing to get them civically connected. Third is donate to Pivot's election work. I know the raffle's over, but if you want to go ahead and make some more donations, help us get to our goal of $10,000. We are still tallying the votes there. I know some folks have made donations on Eventbrite and have done so directly on our Act Blue link. So thank you so much. We'll send out how much we make at the end, but really appreciate the generosity has flowed through during our 2 hours together. And finally, go vote. It's critical that we go out there and vote. We saw how slim there can be slim margins. I know that if you're in some states, you might feel like it doesn't matter. I'm in California, it's going to vote blue anyways. But there are important propositions and measures that are in place, important local government elections that you all have too. So please be mindful of all the dates that are coming at you. It's going to come at you fast. Stay updated. Pivot does a really good job of keeping you posted on all the dates. So follow our social media for that. And that way you don't have to track it yourself. You'll have a constant reminder. And up and down ballot votes really, truly matter. So please go out there. And for those of you who are inspired by some of our elected officials today, if you feel compelled to vote or to run in the future, please know that Pivot is a resource for you. Pivot has done numerous candidate endorsements and support for candidates who have run their race and won. So please reach out to us. Our candidate support team is absolutely phenomenal and will help you through that process. And yes, I hearing from Kenny, go fight and win. Thank you again, everyone. I really hope to be able to meet all of you one day. Really want to get through this, this election cycle together, and just looking forward to the Year of the Dragon. Wish you all the best and hope to see you all again soon, either online or in person.